Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's webinar. I'm just going to give it a few seconds to let everyone come in from the waiting room. I can see a few people trickling in now, which is great. Thank you for joining us from all across Australia and all around the world. If it's morning, night, any of that stuff, we're happy to have you. Alrighty, cool. So I think we've got just a few more coming in, trickling in. Beautiful. All right, we will kick things off. Thank you all for joining us today, and a very warm welcome for today's session, How to Invest in Bali Villas. We're thrilled that so many of you are looking forward to joining us from across the globe, like I'd mentioned. Whether you're a seasoned property investor looking to diversify or you're just starting out to explore why Bali has become such a global hotspot for high value returns, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to go through and show you how the Bali Spaces way and how we do things, moving past the guesswork and using a data-led approach to secure sustainable, competitive ROI. Before we kick things off, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Just so you know, today's session will be recorded. So you guys will receive a recording file after this little MP4. You also receive some resources that I'll talk about at the end of the presentation. There's two little buttons for you guys to be aware of during this webinar. Down at the bottom is a chat button. If there is any tech issues, please use that. If you can't hear us, if you can't see us, just use that little window. I always say rule of thumb, it's probably easier if you just log in, log back out again using that same link. It's probably faster to fix the text issue. But if you do have anything that you can't sort out, just shoot us a little message and our admin will be able to sort it out for you. Lastly, there's the Q&A button. Today's session's about 20 minutes to go through content and then 10 minutes of a Q&A. If you do have questions throughout, please drop them in that Q&A section. It just keeps it all tidy for us in one spot. And then after, when we do the Q&A session at the end, we'll bring them up and kind of go through them. If we do not get to your questions, there will be an FAQ doc that we will send back to everybody. So we will have every question answered, whether it's live or in that doc following today. And without further ado, I'll introduce our presenters and then we'll get started. So first up, we've got Ryan. He is our Director of Construction. Ryan is a veteran builder who's on the ground ensuring every villa we build meets world-class standards of structural integrity and finish. Next up, we've got Amy, our Managing Director. With over 13 years in property and finance, Amy is the powerhouse driving our international growth and ensuring our high-level strategy stays ahead of the market. Next is Aaron, our Head of Investment Strategy. Think of Aaron as our numbers guru. A top-tier financial strategist, he handles the deep dive of due diligence and research required to secure the competitive ROI our clients come to expect. And finally, we have Yulia, our co-founder and head of Indonesian relations. As a Balinese local, Yulia provides the insider advantage navigating complex local networks and community relations to unlock the exclusive opportunities that set Bali Spaces apart. And that's not but me, and I will jump into the team. So first up, we've got Ryan to explain why we chose Bali in the first place.
Yeah, thank you, Maddie, and welcome everybody to the webinar. So like many of us, I've been traveling to Bali now for 25 years, and over the time, I've just fallen in love with the country, the people, and the culture. It's obviously amazing. I actually have two Balinese goddaughters, and Yulia here is their auntie. So for me, Bali Spaces isn't just a business, it's a family. And now I've brought along Amy, Erin, Lalani, and my brother Reese for the journey. So through our Balinese family, we've really secured some amazing workers here that have worked in Bali on some very high-end projects. Yeah, we have good access to workers here in Bali, and yeah, good. Yeah, that's basically it. So move on to the next, please.
Cool. Thank you,
Aaron.
Ryan. All good. Next up, we'll go to Aaron, who will talk about the finance side of why we went for Bali.
Yeah, thanks, Matty. Yeah, hi, everyone. My name's Aaron. So my role at Bali Spaces is really focused on investment strategy and then the numbers just in general behind having a great investment. So to start off, I want to give you some insight on my background and the journey I went through to ultimately make a decision to invest in Bali. As my story is quite the opposite to Ryan's, as prior to investing in Bali, I had not traveled there. However, I had an extensive background in investments and finance. So what really caught my attention was simply the numbers. Now, as most of you would be aware, your typical ROI for Bali is around that 15 to 25%, and that's as a cash flow asset. So when I first heard that, my first thought was, that's a bloody good deal. But my second thought was, well, how is this possible? What are the risks? And I had so many more questions. So what I'd like to do is answer some of those questions that I had and go through the stats and research behind how I eventually made the decision to invest in Bali. So starting with the first piece of the puzzle is your average daily rate, or how much a villa rents on a daily basis. Now, this was something really easy to verify, as you can simply just look at Airbnb or bookings.com, which gives you that insight. The second big piece of the puzzle was occupancy rates. Um, because your daily rate doesn't really mean anything if your investment's sitting vacant. Now, luckily, this data is readily available as it's made publicly available through various research companies. And so ultimately, I was able to take a deep dive into Airbnb's historical data. And in short, that data basically said that all properties don't perform the same in Bali. Now, what I found was that to have a great investment, there was really three key ingredients. And now this might sound obvious, but the first ingredient was just location. The second was your villa design or your overall villa feel. And then third was the management team behind keeping the property rented. Now, with confidence that these things could be achieved, that's where my numbers brain kind of shifted to thinking about the risks. So the first big risk that I asked myself was supply and demand. Now, like, is this investment a short-term fad, or is it sustainable? So the best stat that I found to look into this was looking at international arrivals to Bali. And this data tracks back to the 60s, but effectively over the past 50 odd years, Bali's tourism has been growing by 11% per annum. So it's very strong. The next big question I asked myself was about like how Bali would weather a geopolitical event that could ultimately influence the economy. And I found a really great example for this was between the 5 years of 2000 to 2005, in which we had the 9/11 attack in 2001, with the 2002 Bali bombing, in 2004 with the Boxing Day tsunami, and then with the second Bali bombing. Now, for me, like, any one of these geopolitical events you would think could decimate a tourism industry, but Bali actually still grew. It grew by 8% in that 5 year period. And then the following 5 years in which we had the GFC, Bali's tourism grew by over 60%. Now, moving to the next big risk that I had, or question that I had with myself, was the foreign exchange or currency stability. As I had a concern that, yes, although this property might perform as we'd expect, but the profit's in a foreign currency, and if that currency isn't stable, then your profits could be eroded. Now, when I started researching this, I was fairly naive. Like, as I said, I hadn't really been to Bali. And so I thought Bali was quite a small economy, not realizing that Indonesia itself is one of the world's largest economies. And when you look at that currency relationship, the Australian dollar has more stability with the rupiah than it does with the USD, at least over the past 15 years. It's a very stable economy. The last major risk that I asked myself was simply politics, as there was no shortage of political noise or headlines coming out. But yeah, when you have a look at it, it's no surprise, as 90% of Indonesia is Muslim, 90% of Bali is Hindu, and then the tourism demographic is a Western-based culture. So really, we've got conflicting views, and so there's plenty of agendas and proposals being put out. But ultimately, when you look at that historical data, Bali just always performed. In short, like, as you can imagine, I kept doing lots and lots of research, but ultimately my deep dive into the numbers confirmed that an ROI of that 15 to 25%. It's not just an anomaly, it's a result of Bali fundamentally just being a great investment. So yeah, that's everything from me.
Thank you, Aaron. All right, so that was really the why Bali, why now side of things. We'll now hand back to Ryan to talk about the villas themselves, location, design, and build.
Thanks, Matty. Yeah, like Aaron mentioned, location's obviously very important. It's number one. And through our Balinese network, we've managed to secure some amazing sites here in Uluwatu and Pererenan. Over the past few years, we've seen a big shift from busy Canggu to these new emerging hotspots. So we're really focusing here. Obviously, Uluwatu has some amazing beaches, restaurants, boutique shops, and same with Pererenan. So yeah, we're basically strategically placing our sites around these locations and within 100 meters, 1 to 500 meters walking distance to the beaches and all these areas, so families can get there easily. And yeah, that's location. Moving on to villa design. The first thing we like to do once we've found our site is I go to site with our architects and just get a feel for the site, a feel for the area. A good example of this would be our latest projects, Nadi and Omar, which is situated by the river, surrounded by rice paddies. So we've got a modern tropical design here, which gives a nod to Bali, and has a lot of wood elements and natural stone. All of our villas, or all of our complexes, sorry, come with the option of 1, 2, and 3 beds. So this just caters for different guests, different demographics, and also prevents competition from within the complex. One more thing to note is all of our villas actually come with a private pool. That's it for villa design, Maddie. So build process. We basically construct here very similar to commercial construction in Australia, in the sense that we use concrete as the structure, concrete columns. In some instances, we use ball piles. All of our concrete comes from the plant and is MPA tested. All of our reinforcement is certified. Waterproofing is obviously a big thing here in Bali, in Indonesia, with a tropical climate. So, on the outside of the buildings, we're using Dulux Weather Shield. Under all of our slabs, we have 3 layers of waterproof membrane. On our roofs, we have the adequate screed and waterproofing on there. The materials that we get, we actually do something different to a lot of developers here. We bring a lot of our materials from overseas. Now, in Indonesia, the quality isn't that great, so that's why we like to do this. But it also sets us apart from our competition, gives us something unique. With the build time, we're generally building a villa here within 14 to 16 months. Obviously, a lot better than the Australian market. And another thing that we like to do is offer things like the wellness package, which is ice bath and saunas, which just gives us a unique advantage to our competition.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ryan. All right, now we're going to hand over to Amy to go over structure, compliance, and management.
Thanks, everyone. So far we've covered our relationship in Bali, we've covered land acquisition, the build, and the investment numbers. My role here at Bali Spaces is to look at the structure, compliance, and the operational management of the villa. And I find that these things really pull everything together for a successful outcome. Now, if any of you have started talking about investing in Bali, I'm sure you've heard how are you going to protect yourself? And do you even own the land? And have you thought about all the risks? And it's a lot of fear. And in some cases, rightly so, you are looking at investing in a foreign country. But what I've found is that investments, when they don't perform, it's rarely because it wasn't a good investment and more because it wasn't structured correctly. It can be the Wild West. And I will say you have to make sure you know who to trust. And we see lease agreements that don't clearly outline the transfer rights. We see construction jobs happening without construction agreements. We have permits that were assumed but never approved. And we have individuals looking at doing their own management when they've got no expertise and no licenses to do so. One of the things we do at Bali Spaces is we look at a project structurally and commercially before going to market. So we make sure the zoning is right. We make sure the location, as Ryan mentioned, is appropriate for tourists, that there is access to the right infrastructure. We also look at negotiating the lease with the landowner so that those terms and that back and forth is already done in advance for our buyers. And then we design cost and schedule the construction job before getting to site. All of this front end essentially comes through to our clients. So we have the clear lease deeds that our clients sign. We notarize our construction contract so that everyone is clear on the terms. We make sure that payments are related to milestones. So every time that a client of ours pays, it's because work has already been done. We have defect liability periods, and we also build in grace periods for our contracts for buyers and for the builder, which like appropriately match the situation in Bali and also moving money between different countries. Fundamentally, this is really to make sure that there is clarity for our clients and to reduce their risk. Now, there is a lot of chat at the moment about regulation and the market becoming tighter and more constrained, you could say. But from my opinion, it's just showing that there's an evolution, the market is maturing, and these things are always going to happen. I will touch on one today, which probably most people have seen if you're over Bali and investments in the hotspot areas, and this is around short-term rentals and the ability to put your property on Airbnb or booking.com and have the correct licenses. Now, our clients haven't been impacted by this because what the government is now enforcing is what we've always thought was the right thing for investors, and that is to commercialize your villa through a management agency. The management agency then has the right license, they then have the permits, they lodge all the tax returns, and essentially the end profit of your villa is passed on to you as the individual once all this work is done. So from my opinion, as enforcement increases, people who have their villa structured correctly and with the right operators are actually going to benefit from these changes. Another misconception that I always want to make sure clients are aware of is that getting your keys and construction being finished isn't necessarily the end of the process. You're not going to land these returns straight away. It is the end of stage one. Stage two is the operating side of things. Now, we have a management agency, Luxury Spaces, that takes care of this from our clients. And I will say this is probably the most actively managed part of our business. This is a daily process. We look at the rates, we look at pricing, we look at occupancy, we look at length of stay strategies, diversifying across platforms, managing your review status. This is something that we do actively. And if it's missed, it can really impact your investment. So ultimately, I would say that if you're going to buy a beautiful villa in a strong market, that's not the only thing. You really need to make sure it's structured correctly. You need to make sure it's delivered accurately, and then you have someone managing it ongoing. And for us, that's what we do on a day-to-day basis for our clients. Thanks, Maddie.
Beautiful. Thank you, Amy. So that takes care of our content portion. I can already see some questions coming in, but please drop anything else in that Q&A button there. Before we head into the Q&A section, I just want to cover once again what you guys will receive following today's session. So there'll be a few emails that we sent your way. The first one will include a link for a strategy consultation. So if you guys want to have any one-on-one questions, anything specific that you may have, you can meet with our team across the board, have that session with you guys. There's a direct link so you can go right to the calendar and kind of sort the date and time. You'll also receive our Advantage Guide. It's our latest kind of guide that talks a little bit more about the ROI, specifically about the locations that we're choosing and the reason why, and kind of gives you just a bit more context outside of this webinar. And then lastly, like I mentioned, you'll receive today's recording. So you'll receive the entire session as well as an FAQ doc following the questions, which feeds perfectly into the FAQs. So yeah, please do drop in any questions you may have in that Q&A button. I can see we got heaps in there, which is phenomenal. I'm going to start off and see as much as we can kind of get in the next 10 minutes. But first one that I can see is around the end of a lease. So what actually happens at the end of a 25 or a 30-year lease? Is the extension price fixed, or is that based on market value at the time?
I'll
Amy?
take that question. Yeah, I'll take that one, Maddie. So as I mentioned before, what we do for our clients is we make sure that we negotiate the master lease with the landowners prior to the sales. So we have very clear terms in our contracts regarding the lease. So it is at market rate at the time. How that's worked out is a comparison of what's on the market. But what we will do for you, because of our relationships, because of Ryan and Yulia and what they're doing on the ground, is we will assist you through that process.
Beautiful. We've seen another one come through just now. I'm coming to Bali soon. Can I view current projects? Ames?
Yeah, I'll take that one.
Yeah, Ryan might.
Yeah, I was going to mention this before. Like, I'm always here on site in Bali, so if anybody comes over, they can send a WhatsApp or an email through, and we can arrange a time to meet on site. If you have projects, grab a coffee. We can show you around Pererenan, Uluwatu, or
Beautiful.
Johannesburg. Yeah.
And also, yeah, just a reminder, we will send an email directly after this, so you guys will have a contact link right away. So if you do want to set up a time if you're coming over in the near future, we can do that, which is great. Next one, can you recommend any mortgage brokers or finance advisors who specialize in Indonesian property investments?
I will probably take that one. Yep, we do have a finance broker that we deal with on a regular basis. He is very invested in what we do and knows the ins and outs. So yeah, if you're looking for a broker to help you access equity here, we can definitely refer you on.
Nice. Next one, with so many villas being built in Uluwatu right now, are you guys seeing any signs of oversupply that might push nightly rates down in the next few years?
Maddie, yeah, I'll answer that one. So this was one of those other kind of questions that I asked myself looking into the supply and demand. Now, I think firstly, just when you're like in Uluwatu, you can see that's not a concern as there's so much traffic coming in the morning and leaving in the evening. And really, that's mostly people that are staying in Seminyak or Canggu, where there's just not enough villas for available in Uluwatu. But the second thing that I really found is looking at a maturing market like Seminyak, and that supply takes a very long time to fill. So yeah, it's not a concern for me at all.
Beautiful. Aaron, I do have another question that you might be able to answer. What can you tell us about the Bali economy resilience in more recent years, i.e., since 2010?
Since 2010, it's like obviously there's a conversation around COVID, but I believe from 2010 to 2015, there was around 60 or 57% growth in tourism. And then 2015 to 2020, there was like 60 or 70%. And then yeah, COVID basically we went from 6 million visitors down to nothing. But when you look at 2020, 2025, it looks very similar to those 5 years I was talking about before, where there was a little bit of growth, and we're already seeing that it's rapidly catching up. So without like going into the detail, for me, the data is fantastic right now for international arrivals.
Nice. Beautiful. We are getting heaps in, which I love, a very interactive bunch. So next one is it possible to obtain details on your current offerings via email, or does the strategy call need to occur first?
Oh, that'd be me. We can definitely send you our brochures. So, like Maddie said, if there's anything specifically that you'd like to know about, we can share that. But I would always recommend a strategy call. We love to get to know who you are, what your goal is, where you're actually interested in, so that we can make sure we tailor anything that we have a chat about specifically to what you're trying to achieve.
Nice. Next one, do you have already built properties which can be purchased, or do you only lease the land to new builds?
I'll jump in here again. So we have already built properties, but most of those owners, I would say, are not looking to sell. Although, if anyone is ever looking for an established property, we would always, I'd like give you the option or let them know that someone is looking. We generally arrange a master lease to then go through construction. So yeah, most of our stuff that we would have for you would have to go through the construction process.
Nice. Ryan, I think this next one's for you. I think we're gonna merge two questions together here. Is your architecture local? Is it Australian? What are the general themes of your designs? Are there any key features?
Yeah, good question. Our architects are from Bali. They're basically very creative people. They've not been limited to, I guess, rules and regs in Australia. Very good, very experienced, very good architects. So I prefer to use the architects from here as opposed to architects from Australia, to be honest.
Nice. And is there any core key features that we're seeing as large selling points?
For the villas,
Yeah,
I
like anything.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think just you just need to be unique in a market, like this. You've got to be unique. You've got to be Instagrammable. You've got to do something different, which is what we're really trying to do now with our new projects.
Hmm. Next one, could you also advise if the properties will be leasehold versus freehold?
All the properties that we're looking at are leasehold properties. If you were someone who was specifically looking for a freehold property, we would be able to assist. But what we currently have or our projects are all on a freehold basis, all on a leasehold basis.
Nice. Thank you. All right, next one. What happens if the villa is damaged by a guest? Is there any specific type of insurance you guys have that covers short-term rental damage or public liability?
Yeah, the insurances in Bali are actually very similar to your insurances here if you've got an investment property. We use Allianz, but there are a number of companies. So yes, there is definitely protection for guest damage, but also your booking platforms naturally have those insurances built in as well. So you're kind of getting it from both directions.
Nice. Next one's around visas. Do you assist with visas as well, or have someone you work with, for example, obtaining an investment visa?
We don't have anyone in-house. We do have a consultant that we can refer to. Very luckily, because we've got Yulia as part of our team, we've been able to, team up with some consultants. So if anyone was looking for a visa, Yulia would be able to assist us with that.
Nice. Next one is who is the primary guest demographic that you've seen recently? Are you guys seeing more long stay digital nomads or short stay luxury tourists?
For this one, I would say it really depends on where your villa is located. So, if I was having a look at Pererenan, which is just outside of Canggu, we are really seeing a lot of long-term stays. There's a big expat community there. Whereas if I move to, say, Uluwatu, it's much more a holiday short-term stay. However, from a guest perspective, there really are from all over the world. We've not really got one niche, of people staying with us.
Nice. Next one, Aaron, I think you might be able to tackle this one around, am I restricted on how many days I can stay in my own villa per year? Does personal usage significantly impact projected ROI?
Yeah, thanks, Manny. I think it really comes down to like an objective question. Like if you wanted to make the most out of your villa, then you're not going to be staying in it at all. But yeah, if you really want to stay in the villa that you love, then it's going to slowly chip away at your return. But from like a management cost perspective, I think that's where I'll refer that to Amy.
Yeah, we have clients, on both ends. And so therefore we have a very fluid management agreement depending on what those clients want. We can take care of things from a owner occupied basis, or we can completely have it from a rental. So each person, as I mentioned before, we really want to sit, get to know your goals, and then we'll structure an agreement based on that.
Beautiful. All right, I think we can probably tackle two more questions. I see heaps in there. So, like I mentioned, if we can't get to it during today's session, we'll have an FAQ doc. Everyone's questions will get answered. So do not worry. There's another one, Ryan, I think you guys can tackle that you might have mentioned during the session around like monsoon ready features. It's quite a wet region in Bali. How do you include these features? Do you to help prevent mold, drainage issues that are so common in Bali builds?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the number one thing that we do is we want to get rid of the water as quickly as possible. So on our roofs, we have adequate slopes, adequate drainage. We also install subaks around all of our projects just for good water runoff to redirect it. Like I mentioned earlier, we have the waterproof membranes under the slab. It's important we raise the villa slab above natural ground level, above natural ground level, generally above 60 centimeters above that to prevent water ingress. Another thing we do, the Hebel that we use is actually very water resistant, so that's another feature. I think that covers everything in regards to
Next one, Aaron, I think you can talk this around ROI. Does the 17 to 20% ROI figure account for the 10 to 20% management fees and a sinking fund for long-term repairs?
Yeah, great question, Maddie. So I guess it really comes down to the villa that you have, but for all of our villas, the ROI is after the management costs and any kind of sinking fund costs.
Beautiful. All right, I think we can do one more and then we got to wrap up, guys. I apologize if we didn't get to your question, but we will answer them in the FAQ doc. Last one, Ames, you might be able to go for this one. If I'm only buying one villa, is it worth the cost and effort of setting up a PTPMA company, or is a personal leasehold safer for a first-time investor?
As I mentioned earlier, we generally advise that you run your villa through a management agency that commercializes it. And because you're doing that, the extra costs of a PTPMA, the tax consultant, the returns, the licenses, it's really not worth it. You're best to keep it simple, and keep it in your own name.
Beautiful. All right. I think that about wraps up. I just want to make sure we don't run over time too much. But like I mentioned, if we didn't get to your questions, we will send an FAQ doc afterwards. I've put them all here. Thank you for so much for sending them in. And thank you for joining us for today. If you do have any other questions, please reach out. But we'll be in touch shortly. Have a great afternoon.